Director General of the OPCW to acquiesce to the British request to dispatch a technical assistance mission to the United Kingdom. The investigation underway must be allowed to run its course in full independence and without any meddling. In light of the factors that the United Kingdom has shared with us thus far, we share the UK's assessment, namely that there is no other plausible explanation than that of Russian responsibility. Russia is constantly preaching the virtues of cooperation, and France is therefore surprised by the Russian refusal to reply to the entirely legitimate questions put by the United Kingdom. We call upon Russia to help shed light on responsibilities for the heinous attack in Salisbury. And we also call upon Russia to declare to the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons any programs which might not yet have been reported to that organization. President, the prohibition on the use of chemical weapons is the very bedrock of the non-proliferation regime on which our collective security system is founded. In that understanding, the rampant and unrestrained re-emergence in the Middle East, in Asia, and now in Europe of these vile weapons cannot be tolerated. We established a taboo on the use of chemical weapons together, and that taboo or that ban has been broken, including in Salisbury. This speaks as to why it is urgent that we reaffirm and build upon the absolute prohibition on the use of chemical weapons. The trivialization of the use of chemical weapons would mark the victory of barbarity over civilization and would mark a terrible setback for the international order. That is why we cannot simply sit idly by when they are used, and all the more so when, and let us not deceive ourselves, a trivialization of chemical weapons will only open the door for the spectre of chemical terrorism, which we all fear so rightly, as we would all pay the price for said chemical terrorism. This is why France will never allow those who use or develop toxic agents to enjoy impunity. We reiterate our full support for the existing institutions and framework, in particular the OPCW. France will remain fully committed to support the OPCW's activities with all the means at our disposal. That is the very purpose of the International Partnership Against the Impunity in the Use of Chemical Weapons, set up following the French initiative in January of this year. The seriousness of what's at stake mean that we cannot sit idly by. The use of chemical weapons by whoever and in whatever circumstances is an affront to international conscience. It also represents a potentially deadly threat to the very stability of the international non-proliferation regime. This regime is the most well-founded and most mature of all the non-proliferation regimes and architecture. If we were to allow it to simply founder without reacting, that would simply to be tacitly accepting the collapse of the entire non-proliferation regime that we set up together painstakingly to tackle the issue of weapons of mass destruction over the last few decades. And said non-proliferation architecture is the very cornerstone of our international security architecture. In order to respond to what's at stake, President, we need Russia's sincere response, and they must be part of the solution and not part of the problem. Russia was one of the pioneers of the international chemical non-proliferation regime. It now must stand up and prove to be one of the pillars of that regime by acting responsibly. President, given that this is an existential threat for us all, the fight against weapons of mass destruction must be put back at the very heart of the priorities of the Security Council. If there is one area in which the Security Council bears moral and political responsibility to act as one and to come together, it is here on this particular issue. If there is one area where the credibility of the Security Council itself is at stake and where tactical games cannot be played, it is on this very issue. Thank you very much.
I'd like to thank the representative of France for your statement.